Jacob marries Leah and Rachel. Genesis 29:14, 29:30. The narrative of Jacob marrying Leah and Rachel, as detailed in Genesis 29:14, 29:30, is a compelling tale of love, deception, and the complex dynamics of familial relationships. It unfolds against the backdrop of Jacob's journey to Haran, where he seeks refuge from his brother Esau's wrath and encounters his uncle Laban's family. The story begins with Jacob arriving in Haran and meeting his cousin Rachel, Laban's younger daughter, at a well. Overwhelmed by Rachel's beauty and charm, Jacob is immediately smitten and is filled with an intense desire to marry her. In a gesture of hospitality, Jacob rolls away the stone covering the well and waters Rachel's flock, signaling his goodwill and intentions towards her. Jacob's encounter with Rachel leads him to Laban's household, where he is warmly welcomed by Laban, his mother's brother. Laban invites Jacob to stay with him and offers him employment, promising to reward him with wages for his labor. Jacob accepts Laban's offer and agrees to work for him for 7 years in exchange for Rachel's hand in marriage. The narrative takes a dramatic turn as the 7 years of Jacob's service draw to a close, and he eagerly anticipates marrying Rachel. However, Laban, motivated by greed and cunning, deceives Jacob by substituting his elder daughter Leah for Rachel on the wedding night. Jacob, unaware of Laban's deception due to the darkness of the night and the veiling of the bride, consummates the marriage with Leah instead of Rachel. Upon discovering Laban's treachery, the next morning, Jacob confronts him, expressing his outrage and dismay at being deceived. Laban offers a flimsy excuse for his actions, citing the custom of marrying off the elder daughter before the younger and promising to give Rachel to Jacob in exchange for an additional 7 years of service. Despite feeling betrayed and deceived, Jacob agrees to Laban's terms, driven by his deep love for Rachel and his desire to be united with her. He fulfills his additional 7 years of service, enduring the hardships and challenges of laboring for Laban's flocks in exchange for Rachel's hand in marriage. The narrative concludes with Jacob marrying Rachel and building a life together with her and Leah in Haran. Despite the initial deception and discord surrounding their union, Jacob's marriages to Rachel and Leah result in the birth of 12 sons, who become the founders of the 12 tribes of Israel, fulfilling God's promise to Abraham of descendants as numerous as the stars. In summary, the story of Jacob marrying Leah and Rachel in Genesis 29:14, 29:30 is a captivating tale of love, deception, and the complexities of familial relationships. It underscores the themes of trust, perseverance, and the sovereignty of God in fulfilling his promises. Through the example of Jacob and his marriages to Leah and Rachel, the narrative offers profound insights into the human experience of love, betrayal, and redemption, as well as the transformative power of God's providence in shaping the course of history. Joseph and his brothers, Genesis 37. The story of Joseph and his brothers, narrated in Genesis 37, is a captivating saga of jealousy, betrayal, resilience, and divine providence. It follows the life of Joseph, the favored son of Jacob, and the tumultuous relationships he shares with his siblings, who ultimately sell him into slavery out of envy. The narrative begins with Joseph, the beloved son of Jacob and his wife Rachel, being gifted a coat of many colors as a symbol of his father's favoritism. Joseph's special status and the vivid coat provoke jealousy and resentment among his brothers, who regard him with disdain and hostility. Joseph's dreams further exacerbate the tension between him and his brothers, as he shares his visions of future greatness and dominion over them. His brothers, incensed by Joseph's perceived arrogance and presumption, conspire to rid themselves of him and plot to kill him when he comes to visit them in the fields. However, Reuben, the eldest brother, intervenes and persuades the others to spare Joseph's life by suggesting they throw him into a pit instead. Intent on eventually rescuing Joseph and returning him to their father, Reuben plans to secretly deliver him from harm. As Joseph approaches his brothers in the fields, they seize him and strip him of his coat of many colors, casting him into a dry pit. Seated in the pit, Joseph pleads with his brothers for mercy, but they remain unmoved by his cries. Meanwhile, Reuben, unaware of his brother's scheme, is absent from the scene. While Joseph languishes in the pit, his brothers spot a caravan of Ishmaelite traders passing by and seize the opportunity to sell him into slavery for 20 pieces of silver. Joseph is subsequently transported to Egypt, where he is sold to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. Meanwhile, the brothers deceive Jacob by presenting him with Joseph's coat of many colors, which they have dipped in goat's blood to simulate Joseph's death. Jacob, grief-stricken and inconsolable, mourns the loss of his beloved son, refusing to be comforted by his sons and daughters. In Egypt, Joseph faces trials and tribulations, but ultimately finds favor in the eyes of Potiphar, who entrusts him with responsibility and authority in his household. However, Joseph's newfound success is short-lived, as he is falsely accused of attempting to seduce Potiphar's wife and is unjustly thrown into prison. Despite the injustices he faces, Joseph remains steadfast in his faith and integrity, relying on God's guidance and provision to sustain him through adversity. In prison, Joseph interprets the dreams of two fellow inmates, a cupbearer and a baker who serve in Pharaoh's court. His interpretations prove accurate, foreshadowing the cupbearer's restoration to favor and the baker's execution. Years pass, and Joseph's gift of dream interpretation catches the attention of Pharaoh, who seeks insight into the meaning of his own troubling dreams. Summoned from prison, Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dreams as prophetic warnings of a coming famine and offers counsel on how to prepare for and mitigate its effects. Impressed by Joseph's wisdom and discernment, Pharaoh appoints him as second in command over all of Egypt, granting him authority to oversee the storage and distribution of grain during the 7 years of plenty and the ensuing 7 years of famine. As the famine spreads throughout the land, Jacob and his sons, including Joseph's brothers, suffer from hunger and deprivation in Canaan. Hearing of Egypt's abundance of grain, Jacob sends his sons to Egypt to purchase provisions for their family. Upon arriving in Egypt, Joseph's brothers unknowingly encounter him, but they fail to recognize him in his position of power and authority. Joseph, however, recognizes them and devises a plan to test their character and ascertain their intentions. Joseph accuses his brothers of being spies and detains them in custody, demanding that they bring their youngest brother Benjamin to Egypt as proof of their honesty. In a poignant moment of reflection, the brothers acknowledge their guilt and express remorse for their actions against Joseph, unaware that he understands their conversation. Joseph ultimately reveals his identity to his brothers, overcome with emotion and forgiveness. He reassures them that God orchestrated their actions for a greater purpose to preserve life and bring about their reconciliation. Overwhelmed by Joseph's mercy and grace, the brothers embrace him in tearful reunion, acknowledging their past transgressions and their newfound reconciliation. The narrative concludes with Joseph orchestrating the relocation of his family to Egypt, where they settle in the land of Goshen and prosper under Joseph's protection and provision. Joseph's reconciliation with his brothers and his reunion with his father Jacob symbolize the restoration of familial bonds and the fulfillment of God's providential plan. In summary, the story of Joseph and his brothers in Genesis 37 is a riveting saga of jealousy, betrayal, resilience, and divine providence. It follows Joseph's journey from favored son to enslaved prisoner to esteemed ruler, highlighting the transformative power of forgiveness, reconciliation, and redemption. Through Joseph's experiences, the narrative offers profound insights into the complexities of human relationships, the consequences of envy and deceit, and the enduring faithfulness of God in guiding and sustaining his people through adversity.
The Cupbearer and the Baker, Genesis 40. Welcome to our channel. Today our video is the Cupbearer and the Baker. In Genesis 40, we get a really interesting view of life's ups and downs, alongside how divine plans work and the magic of interpreting dreams. This tale is about dreams, what they mean, and how prophecies come true, all while Joseph sits in prison in Egypt. So here's the scene. Joseph, who's a prisoner in Pharaoh's palace now, is given the job of looking after two of Pharaoh's officials, the cupbearer and the baker. Unfortunately for them, they've disappointed Pharaoh and are stuck in the same jail with Joseph. One night, both men have troubling dreams that leave them feeling worried. When Joseph sees they're upset, he asks what's bothering them. They tell him all about their dreams. The cupbearer describes his dream of 3 branches full of grapes that he squeezes into Pharaoh's cup. Meanwhile, the baker talks about his dream of 3 baskets of bread on his head that birds are eating. Joseph has a special talent for understanding dreams thanks to God. He figures out what these dreams mean and shares his thoughts with the cupbearer and the baker. He happily tells the cupbearer that in 3 days he will go back to his old job serving Pharaoh wine again. But for the baker, sadly, he will face execution. His body will be hung up for birds to eat. Yikes! Just like Joseph said, the cupbearer returns to his job while the baker meets a sad end. But here's the twist. Once he's back in Pharaoh's good graces, the cupbearer forgets all about Joseph. He doesn't mention him at all to Pharaoh like Joseph had hoped. This story means a lot more than just what happens at face value. It hints at how one day Joseph will get out of prison and eventually rise to power in Egypt. It also shows how important it is to pay attention when trying to understand God's messages. The tale sheds light on ideas like divine guidance and timing, as well as being faithful when you receive messages from God. Even if things look rough, it reminds us that God is always working behind the scenes. Joseph's kindness is also worthy of mention. Even though he's unfairly locked up himself, he cares for these other prisoners and tries to bring them comfort using his special ability. In short, Genesis 40 teaches us a beautiful lesson about divine plans and understanding what dreams can tell us. It emphasizes being faithful and having integrity when responding to divine messages, while showing how God guides his people through tough times. Through Joseph's moments with both the cupbearer and baker, we learn deep truths about life and the unwavering support of God. For more videos, please like, share, and want blessings, subscribe to our channel.
Pharaoh's dreams, Genesis 41. The account of Pharaoh's dreams in Genesis 41 presents a pivotal moment in the story of Joseph and the narrative of Israel's emergence as a nation. It is a tale of divine revelation, interpretation, and providential foresight, showcasing Joseph's pivotal role as an instrument of God's plan in Egypt. The narrative unfolds with Pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt, being troubled by 2 dreams that leave him deeply disturbed and perplexed. In the first dream, Pharaoh dreams of 7 sleek and fat cows emerging from the Nile River, followed by 7 gaunt and emaciated cows that devour the healthy ones. In the second dream, Pharaoh sees 7 plump and bountiful ears of grain growing on a single stalk, which are subsequently consumed by 7 withered and blighted ears of grain. Pharaoh's dreams unsettle him, and he seeks counsel from his wise men and magicians, but none are able to provide him with a satisfactory interpretation. It is only when the cupbearer, who had been restored to his position following Joseph's interpretation of his dream, remembers Joseph's ability to interpret dreams accurately, that Pharaoh learns of Joseph's presence in the prison. Joseph is summoned from the depths of the prison and brought before Pharaoh to interpret his dreams. Joseph, acknowledging God as the source of interpretation, listens intently as Pharaoh recounts his dreams, and he offers a divine interpretation of their meaning. Joseph explains that both dreams convey the same message. Egypt will experience 7 years of abundance, during which the land will yield plentiful harvests and prosperity will abound. However, these years of plenty will be followed by 7 years of severe famine, during which the land will be ravaged by hunger and scarcity, and the abundance of the previous years will be forgotten. Impressed by Joseph's wisdom and discernment, Pharaoh recognizes him as a man endowed with the Spirit of God and appoints him as second in command over all of Egypt, entrusting him with the task of overseeing the preparations for the impending famine. Pharaoh bestows upon Joseph his signet ring, robes of fine linen, and a gold chain, symbolizing his authority and status as a ruler in Egypt. Under Joseph's guidance and direction, Egypt becomes the epicenter of preparation and provision during the years of plenty, as grain is stored in abundance to sustain the nation through the years of famine. Joseph's administrative skills, foresight, and God-given wisdom ensure that Egypt is well prepared to weather the storm of famine and emerge stronger on the other side. The significance of Pharaoh's dreams extends beyond the immediate events depicted. They serve as a turning point in Joseph's life, marking his ascent from slavery and imprisonment to prominence and power in Egypt. Moreover, they foreshadow the fulfillment of God's covenantal promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, as Joseph's rise to prominence paves the way for the preservation and eventual redemption of the Israelite nation. The story of Pharaoh's dreams highlights the themes of divine revelation, providential foresight, and the sovereignty of God in guiding and directing the course of history. It underscores the idea that God is actively at work in the affairs of humanity, orchestrating events according to his divine plan and purpose. In summary, the account of Pharaoh's dreams in Genesis 41 is a tale of divine revelation, interpretation, and providential foresight, showcasing Joseph's pivotal role as an instrument of God's plan in Egypt. Through Joseph's interpretation of Pharaoh's dreams, the narrative illustrates the power of divine revelation to foretell future events, and the sovereignty of God in guiding and directing the course of history.